What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the On the Bubble podcast. We're doing a little roundup episode after day one, the first day of the college basketball season. Um, Crazy game that we just had going on, Florida and Arizona. Lots of great games today. Auburn went to overtime. Michigan State looked good today. Ohio State had a crazy game, high scoring game. So yeah, lots of great basketball today. TCU was in a little bit of a tight one. Kansas played Darren Peterson. So yeah, lots to talk about. Arkansas looked really good. But yeah, lots to talk about from day one of the college basketball season. Yeah, let's start it off with the marquee matchup of the night, Florida Arizona. Arizona comes out with the win. Koa Peat, what looks like not like even a freshman. 30 points tonight. What can you say, Brendon?
I mean, this was obviously the marquee matchup of, maybe even the week. We got some other great games coming up too, but first of all, to open up the season with, two historically great programs, and then not only are they historically great, they both, Florida's the defending champs. Arizona is on under Tommy Lloyd. I think haven't had a year with like less than 25 wins. Just two of the marquee programs of the 2020s so far, and for both to agree to open up the season on neutral site. Granted, Arizona is very familiar with playing in Vegas. It's not the same as Florida making that trip, but it's just great for the sport that this game happened. And it's great for the sport that it happened the way they did, down to the wire. You saw Arizona tried to almost give it away late with a couple of turnovers. They weren't handling the press, but they did manage to hold on, and you touched on it. But Koa Peat was the star in Vegas tonight. And Koa Peat's a guy who, you and I covered high school basketball for a long time and both worked in the Arizona State program, and Koa Peat was priority target. We were both working Koa Peat's official visit there. So we're familiar with the name, but, when you've had three incoming freshmen really dominate that discussion with Darren Peterson, AJ DeBansta, and Cam Boozer, all incredibly talented players. This freshman class is unbelievable. But Koa Peat was a guy who I think was flying under the radar a bit. And he also, too, was a guy who was very highly regarded as a recruit, but he talked to a lot of scouts, and I don't think anybody expected him to. Nobody expected him to score 30 in his debut. Like, it was he would progress. He might, you had scouts saying that there was a decent chance he would take a second year in school, potentially, just giving he had areas to work on. And to be quite honest with you, none of their criticisms of him were immediately proven wrong tonight. A lot of the questions were about his jump shot, about his outside scoring, like how would that impact him? And he didn't need to score on the outside tonight. He was physically dominant, which you don't see a lot as a 18-year-old kid. Goes out there and looks like maybe the biggest guy on the floor, and this is he's not playing a mid-major team. He's playing the defending champs Florida, and to look like that, looks like a linebacker out there just with his build. But to the way he was able to maneuver around the paint, some fadeaways, solid post game, just a soft touch to pair with that just explosiveness and size, and it was Florida couldn't stop it. He had 30 on 11 of 18 shooting, 7 boards and 5 assists to go with it. I think the only part of his game that you could say was a flaw tonight was that free throw shooting, but he did manage to hit a couple of clutch ones late when they needed him. So he was the star of the show, backed by Jaden Bradley, who also was incredible. 27 points, a guy who doesn't get talked about very much, as Tommy Lloyd said in their post-game TNT interview, but he's super talented, and so to see Arizona handle business like that, I picked them going into it, but this was a game where I thought they both felt very even. Could go fast forward in a month, and Florida's in a very different place, but Tommy Lloyd had his team ready. They have a good balance of players between returners and then newcomers, and they took care of business in a place that they're familiar with winning in.
Oh yeah, Michaela North. You could definitely hear those U of A chants,
Yeah.
PTSD from those. But yeah, I thought like you said, Koa Peat looked really impressive just from a physical standpoint. Like you said, we're not talking about like Northern Arizona or something like that. We're talking about like Florida, the defending champions, a team that like where I think one of their biggest strengths, if not their biggest strength, is like their front court. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Hauk, Chenaloo, um, Hangladen, and then
Yep.
Condon. So yeah, I mean, he looked like not even a freshman, not even like this is his first game of his career.
Yeah, I mean, Florida has, Bruce Pearl after in their studio show said Florida has the best front court in the country, and nobody comes to mind to necessarily dethrone them in that regard. And I don't, and my mind hasn't changed after tonight. Their bigs still play. I mean, Thomas Howell had 27. Handel Hagen had a double double. I mean, they didn't play poorly, and it was just more so like Koa Pete was able to finish, amongst the trees. He was able to, still compete down low with that established front court, and to do that in his debut as a freshman, against SEC athletes in size and championship level size is was very impressive. I thought Arizona was going to win. I didn't think Koa
Mhm.
Pete was going to have 30. I didn't think Koa Pete was. I was going to be. I would probably say he was going to have like under 15. I thought Koa Pete was going to take time. I thought he was going to be kind of a role player this year. And, obviously this is one game, and that could still be the case, but nothing he showed tonight has showed, like, it wasn't like a guy get hot and, he was, scoring from all over the place, hitting, making jumpers he's not normally going to or anything like that. Like, everything was controlled in the flow of the game. There was a reason why he was so efficient. There was nothing to really stand out as like, oh, he's not going to be able to do that consistently. He's not going to be able to do that against Kansas or Tech or whoever they're playing. He did it against Florida and made it look easy.
Right, right. Yeah, for sure. And like we touched upon about Florida, um, a thing that I want to talk about tonight was obviously their new backcourt with Boogie Flan and Xavier Lee. Um, I think that was definitely a huge question because when you lose Walter Clayton, Will Richard, Elijah Martin, basically their whole backcourt, that was definitely a big question tonight. And Xavier Lee, and Boogie Flan, 23 points combined, 8 for 26 from the field. What were your thoughts on their backcourt tonight?
Yeah, I thought Lee was. I thought he was solid. I mean, whenever you're jumping up from the Ivy League to, this isn't an SEC game obviously, but you're playing Arizona, like there's going to be a learning curve, especially like we're in game one. You're adjusting to that speed of the game, the physicality. It's just not the same. And I thought he did fine. You know, he had, you said, a combined for 23. I think he had 14, and he had like 6 boards, 5 assists, something along those lines, kind of a little bit all around. Um, Flan I thought was kind of underwhelming, but once again it's early. I think the biggest thing with them, especially if we're comparing it to their backcourt from last year, is they're not nearly as physical or explosive, or just right now playing like standout athletes. And that's not to knock Lee or Flan, but there was an energy with Walter Clayton was Walter Clayton, and he was 6'2", but like he was 6'2", 195. Like, he had muscle to it, he had explosiveness. I mean, could still go on and dunk on somebody. Like, he was a different athlete. He was an SEC athlete. Same with Elijah Martin, and then Will Richard, of course, was 6'5", like almost 200 pounds. Like, he was clearly bigger than both Lee and Flan. But Lee's 6'4", but he's scrawny. He's not an explosive, like, physical player, which is fine. He's really good at what he does. I mean, he's really good at maneuvering around defenders. He can score on all three levels. He's going to be good for them. He had 14. Flan seemed passive, and so I think the perimeter play just felt different from Florida from last year. Just the biggest thing that stood out to me was the physicality. Like, Florida's guards last year felt like they were attacking you, attacking you, attacking you on offense, and then on defense, like, you weren't given space. They were physical. It drains you. It wears you down. Where it didn't feel like that tonight.
Right, right. And then on the opposite side of things, does this maybe change anything how you feel about Arizona or not? Like heading into the season, just like how you feel about them.
I was
Mm-hmm.
high on them anyways. I mean, if Koa Peat's not gonna have 30 every night, but like if Koa Peat takes over as their alpha scorer, like that's different than I was expecting. And it raises their ceiling. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
if you have more guys that can step up and lead like that. Jaden Bradley's great. I thought he's great. And then, of course, they have good pieces too. I would be interested to see how Braden Burries does. He was quiet tonight, but I think that's another freshman who isn't getting talked about. But even like looking at him on the court, like he looks like he belongs. Like he has like championship caliber size and athleticism. I don't think really I have strong changes in opinions on either of these teams. I think Florida will take some time to mesh. I think Florida will be dangerous. I think when you pair Xavier Lee and hopefully Boogie Flang gets going for them with that front court, like there's not many teams that can beat you. I don't think there's many teams that can beat either of these teams. They just ran into each other, and we got a very competitive. Not gonna throw out the elite. This feels like an Elite Eight game on the first game of the year, but I mean, those are two teams who very well could be playing in the Elite Eight down the road, and nobody would be surprised. I think they're both top 10 teams as of right now. I mean, we still have a lot of basketball to watch around the country, but credit to both of them for playing this competition and not going to knock Florida for losing to a very very good Arizona team because at least you played them. So
Yeah, definitely. I think just touching on Arizona, I feel like Koa Pete, the thing with Arizona, I feel like the past couple of years we've always like talked about at least the past couple of years, we've always talked about like their guard play.
mm-hmm.
Caleb Love and then Benedict Mathurin, and like even Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, the past couple of years, just seeing them from afar in the Pac-12 and the Big 12. We always talked about like their guard play. And I feel like Koa Pete kind of adds like a dimension. I feel like I don't know. I feel like in my opinion they didn't have necessarily last season. I did like their bigs last season in terms of like Vesar, Krevis, and Awaka. I think Awaka's really good, but he is kind of a bit of a smaller big, even though he's a great rebounder. I think Koa Pete kind of adds like that all around skill set, and like obviously like he's a 5-star recruit. Obviously he's
Mm-hmm.
insanely talented, but he kind of just adds a dimension where I feel like maybe they really haven't had off the top of my head since maybe like a Tubelis, since those teams like a couple of years ago.
Right, the Tabellus,
Uh-huh.
Mathering, Coloco. I mean, those teams. I mean, all pros there. And I think Pete is just a unique player. I think the concern coming in was because he feels like kind of a tweener. He's what? I mean, how tall is he? 6'7"?
Yeah, maybe 6'7", 6'8", like around there. Yeah.
Right. And so, we saw tonight. Like, I don't think he's going to have difficulty, especially now after tonight at the college
Mhm.
level. I think that's something NBA scouts will still be concerned about because where are you going to put him on an NBA floor? But like, Arizona's not worrying about that. That's not their problem.
Mhm.
And so he brings a very interesting wrinkle to their style of play. He's a bruiser. I mean, Arizona took 5 threes, like, and they went 2 of 5, 3. I mean, you you don't see teams, and they chose not to take it. Like, I don't think Florida was aiming or striving to run them off the line. Like, they just in their flow of the offense, they only took 5 threes, and that isn't very Tommy Lloyd like. Um, and so I mean, credit to him because he adjusting his game plan for what he has, and Kobe Pete's not a shooter, and that's fine. He doesn't need to be clearly, and so I think their team is interesting. I think it will be more. It just will be different from the past Tommy Lloyd teams. I mean, you score. How many did they score? I can't remember the final score, but it was 80s.
93.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
93 with
Uh,
5 3-point attempts. Like that's kind of
yeah.
unheard of, especially against a Florida. You're not going against Sam Houston State or Northern Arizona, whoever. Like you put up 93 with basically all 2 pointers and free throws against the defending champs. Like it's an interesting offense.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Just building off of that, I think we can go into a conference that I'm really excited about. I think arguably one of the best, definitely one of the best conferences in the nation, the Big 12. and just our thoughts on the Big 12. We touched upon it in the last podcast, but we kind of just went rapid fire pretty quickly. But um, I was just interested kind of in the Big 12 because kind of breaking down teams into like tiers. Because I feel like the Big 12, you have teams. I feel like the Big 12, in my opinion, like the tiers where I have it, and then you have a kind of a drop off. I think that top tier is like a Houston, BYU, Texas Tech, Arizona, Iowa State, and Kansas. And then after that, there's kind of a drop off. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the Big 12 so far this year, and your outlook?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree about that drop off. I think the Big 12 has a lower floor than the last few years. And that might not be completely true. I'm like, dude, but just when I was looking at, you know, when I was deciding my tiers, I was like, oh, like there are some cleaner cuts in my mind, which because I'm thinking that means it's gonna all be wrong in a month. But I mean, I'm a Houston guy and have been. So I'm always high on Houston, and ever since I mean, Samson's been doing his thing there, like, and so they, until proving otherwise, in my mind, are the top team, are the top dog. I love BYU's roster. I think you have a bunch of exciting pieces, and they fit. I like, of course, it's AJ DeBansta, but you bring back Richie Saunders, who I think will, I think like he could be their leading scorer over DeBansta. And then Rob Wright is a phenomenal point guard. And that game is going on right now, so I don't know how it's exactly unfolding. But just offensively, they have so much firepower, and I think the pieces complement each other. And so I think BYU is I I can't remember my rankings to be honest, but I think they're a top five team in the country. And so I think Houston is as well. So even there, I have a mini bit of a drop off, and then I kind of don't know how I would rank the rest of the teams. I think right now maybe like Arizona, and then Kansas and Tech are pretty similar in my mind. I think both those teams have an All American on their team, and Darren Peterson at Kansas, who I think is the best freshman in college basketball. I'm on his side in the cluttered A lists here of freshmen, and then Topping is my player of the year at Tech. So those teams will really be okay. We know they have superstars. Pretty much in every game this year, they're going to have the best player on the floor. Now it will be how well can those other pieces help lighten the load, especially for a guy like Toppin when you know he's going to be working out of the post. It's easier to throw doubles. It's easier to blitz him. There's options to try to maintain him or to control him, and so it's going to come up with okay, who else is spacing the floor? Who else is knocking down shots? Where Peterson, he's out on the wing. You're not going to send somebody doubling, the guy out on the wing. You might blitz him on some ball screens and maybe not leave him off the ball, different things. But it's not the same as a post guy, like Toppin, where you double him. If he makes the right play, he's going to give it up. So that will be the big thing with Tech this year. But I'm high on Kansas because I'm high on Peterson. I think they have some nice pieces around him, but then there's the drop off as to where I get into my bubble zone, but leaning yes, and that's Baylor, who returns literally no scholarship player from last year. Anytime you do that, I can't be super confident in you. Although they have a Tunde. I always butchered the pronunciation, so I'm gonna be polite and not. Who will be a one and done. Cincinnati, I lean yes, and then those are my tournament teams as of now. So that's 8. That's half the league. I don't know how many they got last year. I think that's a little bit lower than they had last year. I think they probably had like 10. Um, then my bubble leaning no. I have West Virginia. I actually have ASU like on the wrong side of the bubble. I don't think ASU will be. I hear the local talk. I have no idea what the
Mhm.
national perception. I mean, they're last in the media poll, but if you look at like Torvik and Ken Palm, I think that they both have them about like fourth or fifth to last. I think they're a very hard team to gauge. A lot of their incoming roster is overseas, so you don't know how things will translate. You don't know much about them. You can watch the film, but you have no idea the level of competition. But I'm really high on Mo Odom. Um, and I think he's what will make them go. I don't think they do enough to make the tournament, but I don't think they're going to be nearly as bad as at least the local fan base does.
Mhm.
Then my teams I have just not really in that bubble talk. Oklahoma State, which I think you have a differing opinion on them, so you can get to that once I'm done. TCU, which that was decided just now when I saw. I don't even know who they lost to, but I checked the score. They're down 20 in the first half to I can't remember, and that's bad. Kansas State's interesting. PJ
Um,
Haggerty could be first team all league. So he could will them there. I could see
yeah.
them fighting up and getting a spot. Just for now, I have them on the wrong side. UCF, Utah, and Colorado, I just don't see it. And that's kind of where ASU gets lumped in a lot too this year. I think ASU has more talent than people realize just because of where it's coming from. It's misleading.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think, like you said, Mo Odom. I think from a
Hmm.
national level, I've seen some like, because obviously, like you said, he was one of, I think you mentioned before, he was like one of the leaders, like in assist to turnover ratio, something like that.
I think he was like top five in
Yeah.
assists in the country.
Uh,
He had like a 30 ball against the Zags. I mean, he was good. And then Pig Johnson in their exhibition had like against A&M had 20 something. Marcus Jackson, then a bunch of guys with
yeah.
names that, to be honest, I can't pronounce yet. It's gonna take some time.
Uh, yeah, like, but I kind of, I think they kind of have like, because I feel like last year, like they had a lot of like, you bring in a lot of guys, kind of like the hype was there, and then now it's kind of like, now maybe there's not as much expectations necessarily, but like maybe that's a good thing in a way because
I
like,
agree.
yeah,
I mean,
mhm,
all of them know what's on the line.
yeah,
Hurley knows. I mean, it's a lame duck year in his contract, so
mhm,
you have to play coach your way into another deal. And he knows that, and I think there's truth to the statement of talking about how Bobby Hurley's at his best with his back against the wall. I don't think last year's team was bad. I think they got derailed by injuries. You can look at what they did in the non-conference. And I won't rant on too much about ASU. Full disclosure, I am going to be biased towards them, but I do think they find a way to make things more interesting this year than people are saying. So that's why I have them as a little bit of a sleeper too.
yeah, definitely. Even if they like go like what 500 in conference play like that, that the Big 12 is crazy. So
Right.
yeah, it's not like the Pac-12 where you kind of got to be like that top four team in the conference. So yeah, definitely. Touching upon BYU, yeah, I think like you said, BYU and Texas Tech. I think like you said, it's gonna come down to like who can kind of be like besides because for BYU obviously Debonsa, and then Texas Tech top and like I said those second options. I think Saunders, like you said, he's one of the he's a great offensive player. Like when he came to Tempe last year, he was just lighting it up. Like they play a crazy play style, looking
Hmm.
like Klay Thompson out there. And then with Texas Tech, I think that guy is like Christian Anderson.
Hmm.
I know people are really high on him. I think yeah. Like what do you think about Christian Anderson?
I think he's. I'm not gonna say like gonna be the most valuable player because obviously
Mhm.
it's tough, but he's the X factor. You know, he if you were to we flash forward to March and you show me one stat to indicate how I think Texas Tech did this year, it would be to look at how he did. And part of that is just solely because Topping will need other options, and I think he's the most likely to step up and score to average maybe close to 15 a game to space the floor. He will be their X factor.
Yeah, definitely. And then yeah, with Baylor, I did not know that they had a whole new roster until Scott mentioned it last
Hmm.
podcast. So yeah, but I think with Baylor for me, they did add some nice pieces that I saw, but I think I just trust Scott Drew when it comes to
Hmm.
like when you're adding like a whole new roster. I look at who their head coach is and like I think Scott Drew is definitely a coach that you can trust for sure.
No, I definitely
Yeah.
agree. I think that's also why I favored
Mm,
them being in versus out. I do trust Scott Drew.
right. And then TCU they lost to New Orleans.
Was it new? Dude, that's I mean
Yeah.
that's the kind of like You and I have been there like our freshman year at ASU when they lost to UC Riverside.
Mm.
Although I think UC Riverside's a slight is better than New Orleans, but it just that's demoralizing
Right.
to go, especially when you know ideally you're on pace to be a bubble team. You know, you're more
Mm.
likely to be all the way out than all the way in. And so when
Mm.
you're a bubble team, you have that quad four. I'm assuming I would be absolutely astounded if it wasn't. But that quad four loss hanging over you, like that's rough for them.
Right. Right. I agree. And then touching to Oklahoma State, I don't know. I don't know what to feel about them because I know like in the exhibition games they played Auburn and they won that game
Mm.
I believe, right? Or was it it was super either they
It
won it or like super
was
close.
it was very close. I
Right.
know what you're talking about. I actually can't
Okay.
remember who
Right.
won, but I do know it was very close.
Right.
I don't like Auburn this year, but
Yeah.
I know it was very close. And they do
Um.
have they're bringing in Anthony Roy who was essentially he didn't play enough games to qualify, but like he was basically the leading scorer in college basketball last year at Green Bay. So he is a fun addition. And I think he'll be exciting. I think he'll win them some games. I think sometimes like you have a guy that can go for 30, maybe 35, and all of a sudden it's in January and you got a I don't know a Baylor or even an Iowa State, right, who came in and was soft or missing shots, and then this guy like goes off and puts you in a position to win late. And he could be that for them 100%.
Right. Definitely, I agree. And then I know Steve Lutz's year two, and they brought in Victorious Miller too from the transfer portal. That's a name that we've heard
Mm.
before. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I've
but I
covered
know
him a few
yeah
times.
yeah. But I know they've brought in some freshman recruits too. Even I know next year's freshman class that I've seen on Twitter. So yeah, I don't know. That's just what I've seen so far. So I don't know. Just building their program. That's why my consensus on them. But I don't know if I expect them to make the tournament necessarily. But it's definitely they have some positive momentum. I feel like that's definitely always a good sign. So yeah,
I
but
mean,
yeah.
Torvik is higher on them than I am too.
Mhm.
I think Torvik has them, 49th in the country, about like middle of the pack in the Big 12. So
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's all we have for Big 12, and then a conference that I think that I know you know a lot about, that you live and breathe for sure, the Big Ten, that I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on because I know that you know this conference in and out. So I just wanted to get your thoughts. And yeah.
yeah, so all I think I'll say my three sleepers first. We'll lead off before we do the tournament picture. Washington 11th in the Big Ten preseason poll. I think they're a tournament team. I think Desmond Claude and Wesley Yates are the second best duo in the conference behind Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Ran. I think Danny Sprinkle is a great coach. I think it gets iffy with these West Coast Big Ten teams in the sense of they're going to lose some games on the road that like, to teams they're better than, and they're also going to get wins at home. Um, it's just such an extreme pendulum in that regard, and that affects UCLA as well and Oregon, but UCLA, who I think will be near that top end of the conference. But another sleeper, Wisconsin, they're seventh in the Big Ten preseason poll. I think they can be more in that top four range potentially. Greg Gard's offenses, I really like his system. They can score the basketball, and he really can bring out the best in some of his players offensively. We've seen guys like Johnny Davis, who seemingly comes out of nowhere, plays himself into being a lottery pick, late lottery, and then leaves that system and he doesn't pan out. Unfortunately for him, but I think John Blackwell is a guy capable of playing his way onto the first team All Big Ten or second team All Big Ten. Nolan Winters, a 7-footer who I think will score double digits, who could get close to averaging a double double, who also is able to space the floor. He shot like 35-ish% from three last year as a 7-footer, so I think that's a fun piece for Greg Gard to have and bring back. So I think they'll do better than 7. And then I have Michigan State on my sleepers list only because they like nationally regarded. I mean, they're ranked, but they're 23 in the country by the AP poll. They're not getting a ton of attention. And I get they lose some pieces. They lose Jace Richardson, obviously the biggest one. You lose Jaden Akins, friend of the program. You lose Frankie Fiddler, and then you lose Trey Holloman to the portal, who was a backup. Both Fiddler and Holloman were they started some games, but once it got down to March, they were both backups. And Fiddler never really got things figured out at Michigan State, and so I don't think they lose an absurd amount for a team who won the conference by multiple games last year. I think they won the conference by more than anyone has in quite some time. Um, and you return guys like Jeremy Fears, Cohen Carr, Jackson Kohler. Those three are, I think, going to have strong years. Kohler tonight had looked really good, had a double double. Fears as well had a double double, over 10 assists. I think he'll be second in the Big Ten in assists behind Braden Smith, probably averaging around that 7-ish mark. And so I think what happens in this era of the transfer portal is when your best acquisitions are retention, it goes under the radar. And so that's kind of why I have them on my sleepers list, because we're retaining guys like Fears, like Cohen Carr, like Jackson Kohler, who would have all been highly sought after had they hit the portal. It's just not as flashy. It's just not as eye catching. You don't get talked about as much. And you pair it with interesting pieces like Trey Fort, the transfer from Samford. They should have had Caleb Glenn, but he has a season-ending injury, so I think that will hurt. I think this team, their biggest flaw will be scoring the ball. They're going to go through droughts. Um, Glenn would have helped with that, but Trey Fort, I think, is going to be their X factor. I think he's a guy who can score on all three levels. He's a microwave type shooter. Like when he gets hot, like he's unconscious and can hit from anywhere with any hands in his face. But he also has a very, very quick twitch and I think, will still be able to blow by Big Ten defenders. Um, I think he'll take some time to get adjusted, but he was relatively aggressive tonight. I think he had like 9. I think at the end of things, I would peg him as the leading scorer, and I think he'll be the X factor, because if he can grow into a player who is their leading scorer when they need scoring the most, then that will be the key for them. But I think they have the perfect collection of pieces. I think it will take time for them to fit correctly. They had a first half looks horrible tonight against Colgate, but I think they're a team that I will really be blooming, in January, and be competing for maybe the league. Michigan and Purdue are both tough, but I think I would put them at 3 right now. I'm looking at it, so that's why I have them on my sleepers list, just a little bit higher than the Big Ten media poll had them at 6.
Got you. And then yeah, I agree with the what you said about, especially about the West Coast Big Ten teams. There's it's just like you said, especially because when it comes to basketball, like the travel, playing like 2 times a week, like, and I don't really know what to make of those West Coast teams. I feel like all of those teams are kind of, except maybe Oregon, I feel like pretty safe to make the tourney. But like other than that, I don't really know what to make of them. Washington, I like them. I like their, like you said, their transfer class.
Mm-hmm.
And then even like USC, I really don't know what to make of them either, because
Right.
I like Musselman, but they did, they lost Wesley Yates, Desmond Claude, so I don't really know what to make of them. And then UCLA, yeah, they should, because especially with Donovan Dent, Eric Daly, and Mick Cronin's a good coach. So, but yeah, I don't really know. I would say from Washington and USC more, from those West Coast Big Ten teams. I really don't know what to make of them. But yeah, you had a good point about that.
Yeah, I have
Mm,
no idea what to make from USC um, either.
mm,
Muss has always kind of been a tough to predict. His teams are tough to predict, kind of with how they'll do. They can be fun, but I think it's obviously every coach in the conference complains about the travel. I see it a lot with football, but it works both ways for those West Coast teams, and so like it's a tough pendulum for them. They have really skewed home and away splits, and so I think that makes it tough for any of them to compete for the league title. I think the team of those four best in position for that is UCLA. I am very high on UCLA, but I don't realistically think they have a chance to compete for the league title just because I do think they'll drop some games they shouldn't on the road. But UCLA is I'm very high on. I'll read the teams I have in the tournament. Purdue, obviously. Then Michigan State, I just talked about them. Michigan, who's extremely talented this year. Illinois, UCLA, Oregon, and Wisconsin. Those are my very solid yeses. What are yours?
Um, I think pretty similar. I have Purdue, Michigan, UCLA, Illinois, MSU, Wisconsin, and Oregon. Those are my for sure. I think
I think
should
that's the
will be, yeah.
same. Yeah.
And then I guess lastly, I was a team that's interesting to me. How do you? Because Indiana, obviously, they fired Mike Woodson, bring in Darren DeVries, and then they bring in his son Tucker DeVries. That's obviously the big addition. I don't really know what to make of Indiana.
There
Yeah.
it's interesting. One thing working against them, and I'm gonna pull up their schedule for me right now, but
Mhm.
they didn't do themselves, and this isn't on DeVries. This I think the schedules are kind of planned out before, but their non-conference schedule is like 169th in the country according to Torvik. You look through it, you look through their first. They don't play a good. I mean, they have Kansas State on November 25th. But yeah, and their toughest non-conference game, they have Louisville and Kentucky. Louisville's on neutral site, Kentucky's on the road. Those are games, to be quite frank, I don't give them much of a chance in. So you drop both of those games, and they don't really have anywhere in the non-conference to get a quality win. Kansas State, but even that's at home, so that's like a quad three still. So that's gonna hurt them, and then they get into a Big Ten play where they have to go at Michigan State, at Michigan, have to go at the LA schools, have to go at Illinois and Purdue. Like, so they have a bad schedule, and they didn't give themselves much room for error. And I don't see them winning enough of those Big Ten games to make it in. Um, I like DeVries, um, but I don't see enough pieces around him to get the wins that they're gonna need to win to make the tournament. So I have them on my outside the bubble going into this year. I think Scott is the one who he's really high on them, or is he not even
Oh,
high on them, but more so DeVries?
I think Evan was pretty high on them.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
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 They have a bad schedule.
Gosh. Yeah. Definitely. Very interesting exit from West Virginia. Very interesting. But yeah. Building off that. Building off that. I know there were some games that you want to touch upon from day one. Let's start off with Auburn. Overtime with Bethune Cookman. I didn't really watch too much of that, but what were your thoughts on Auburn?
I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say I watched it. I wanted to at one point, and then I look and it's on like SEC Plus network or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'm not paying to watch that, but I monitored it. And going into this, I'm not gonna pretend I thought they were gonna lose this game, but I don't see them making the tournament. And if we were to pull up our SEC polls from that we did, like I think significantly lower on Auburn than anyone else on the pod, and I might be harsh. That's all right. I've known to have some extreme takes. I just don't trust them under Stephen Pearl,
Mhm.
like, as opposed to Bruce Pearl. I like Keyshawn Hall a ton. I think he had like almost 30 tonight. I don't know if I trust Pettiford enough in like such a vocal point where last year he had a loaded roster around him, so he could play more comfortably in his role. He didn't need to be the guy. And I think Keyshawn Hall will be the guy scoring wise, but Pettiford is going to be asked to do a lot, and I don't know if I trust him to step up in that way. They did get a good lift from Mississippi State transfer Keyshawn Murphy tonight. I think I would have to look at how many he had, but I think he was second in scoring for them behind Hall. I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're good enough to win enough games in the SEC with as good as a conference that is. It's hard for me to not see them near the bottom. And again, how many SEC teams made it last year? 15,
14?
14,
Yeah.
14 out of 15,
16?
which is absurd. Or 14 out of 16,
Yeah, that
whatever.
is
It's
crazy though.
absurd.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, I guess if Auburn gets in, it's only because everybody else in the conference got in. But they have a very big fan base, so I hope none of them stumble upon this, and I don't look silly after. But that's, try to be bold sometimes. I don't, and I don't think they can blame me after tonight. You just went to overtime with Bethune Cookman, but that's where I stand.
Right. You had them 14th.
Did I? I don't. I'm not shying away from that. Even especially after tonight. I mean, the SEC is good. Like 14th in the SEC is better than most of the country. Still not most of the country, but better than a good chunk of the country. Probably better than like the ACC. Actually, I think is pretty decent this year. But I mean, they're probably like better than like they're probably top half the ACC. Maybe.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think we had them in our composite rankings. We had them six, but I feel like even
Really?
yeah, we had them six. But even when I was ranking them too, even like in my top 25, and like I kind of just gave them the benefit of the doubt, more just because like made the Final Four last year, and I was like just kind of gave them because when you bring back Pettiford, but like you said, they do lose a lot, but I kind of just gave them the benefit of the doubt. But that was like one team where I kind of was like I'm fairly confident, like give it a couple weeks from now, like they're just like not for sure out of the 25 maybe, and like just a team that we're not really talking about necessarily, like. But yeah, preseason I just can't like yeah, they'll make the 25 because give them the benefit of the doubt, but that was a team where I was like, yeah.
Who
Mhm.
pulled them up to six? I mean, I
Let's
am
see.
14. Somebody had to have them
Let's
like
see.
3 or 2.
I had them six, but I had them like just above because I had like Vanderbilt kind of like I know getting a lot of hype. I had them just above Vanderbilt and kind of that cut off of that like top tier of the SEC. Let's see.
Yeah, 6 is fine.
Scott looks like he had them sixth. Oh, Evan had
Okay,
them fourth. That's what pulled them
4th.
pretty high. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean 6 is fine. I was just like, no, but I mean, I thought somebody might have had them at like 3 or 2,
okay.
and I was like, okay,
They do have a rabid fan base. That's definitely for
they do.
sure.
I mean, the SEC kind of all does, but
For
they
definitely.
they they're one that stands out. They scare me.
Right. And then similar, like we said, rabid fan base. A team that also from the SEC that we can talk about is Arkansas. They played today. Darius Acuff looked really good. Malik Thomas looked really good. Yeah, what are your thoughts on Arkansas?
Look, I've been on the Darius Acuff bandwagon since before the kid was even ranked in high school. Watching he's from Detroit. His older brother was a very, very good high school basketball player. Was at Rutgers last year after he started out he started out at Duquesne and then Eastern Michigan and then Rutgers. When I filmed him in high school, he was a bucket. And then Darius Acuff was, I think I first saw him at UIBL Phoenix, for the family, the Detroit Nike UIBL team, and he wasn't ranked at all. But from being from Michigan people, I knew that a lot of people were really high on him in state, and he, I mean, he was just an incredibly fluid point guard. Played everything so patient in the flow of the game. It just felt like a point guard who was always making the right play, who was always under control, who could get to his spots at will and score from anywhere. It just was super super impressive, and he's a guy who, I know transferred over to IMG to play the best competition he could in high school, and still carried over the same results. And tonight, in Arkansas's opener, he had, I think, yeah, he had 22 on 8 of 13. Like, he's just a guy who, at point guard, I think he can score from anywhere. He will always be efficient and always like make the right play, get to his spots, be patient. Just incredibly smooth player. Extremely high on Darius Acuff, um, and I think he's a winning player, and so I think Arkansas is going to benefit from that greatly. I think he's a guy who can help them win a lot of games. When you have someone like that at point, like that does a lot.
Definitely, definitely. Malik Thomas too, another freshman 5-star,
Yeah.
21, 6 and 7. And I think I saw some social media posts. He had a great game too in their exhibition game against Memphis, I believe, a week ago. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's the one thing I feel like about Calipari. He can really recruit these freshmen. But what Scott mentioned before last week, he said his question mark was more about for Arkansas was more like Calipari in the regular season. That was his question mark. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Calipari in recent memory
Mhm.
like hasn't done anything to earn good faith in him. He can have we saw in his late Kentucky teams he could have some phenomenal teams and that play phenomenally all year round. Do you trust them in March? Especially this team which is young. Your two best players this year, in my mind, are gonna be Acuff and Malik Thomas. So okay, do you trust them in March? Personally, I think Acuff is different. I do, but I I could be proven wrong absolutely. And DJ Wagner is a guy who he's a junior now. He was a highly touted player. Was number one in his class for a long period of time in those rankings. Carter Knox is a very talented player. I mean, this Arkansas team is talented. So I mean I think they definitely could feel like those more recent Calipari Kentucky teams where they are competing for an SEC title, and then you're filling out your bracket, and you're like, ooh, I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Their fan base, just off like TikTok, they were giving us a bit of a hard time for sure. They were like, I don't know. I think because let me see, we had them in our SEC rankings.
Was
Let
it
me
because we
see.
all picked Michigan State? I was mad at you
Oh,
guys for picking Michigan State.
oh yeah, I think we had, and then also because we had them like they were fifth on our SEC rank. Let me see the top. I think it was top 25. Because oh yeah, because I posted like all our different top 25s, and like it was just
Mm-hmm.
in different ranges, and people were just like, I think people are like people take it as like disrespect when it really it's like just not really because like when you average it out it comes
Yeah.
to that but it's like even if you're ranked like you're not it's not disrespectful at all top
No,
25
and
team.
look, my preseason rankings, I did not put a ton of thought into them. I hate preseason
Uh-huh.
rankings because I think it's so tough to. I mean, I get it's something to talk about and it's fun it gives you a benchmark on
Mhm.
where to go next. But I put a lot more thought into even just next week after watching games and I'm not gonna like hold Florida negative because they lost to a good team. Like my eyes can tell me that Florida looked like a top 10 team tonight, even though they lost the basketball game. My eyes can tell me that TCU deserves to be relegated to the American Conference. Um, but yeah,
No, for sure preseason polls are definitely where like Torvik, Ken Palm just they
hmm
come in handy because you're kind of just working off that you're not really working off like because you can't see the games so
right.
like it's
Especially
just
now more
metrics.
than ever with the portal. Like so many, majority of these rosters are over
Oh yeah.
50% new.
Mhm.
Michigan State I feel high on because they're kind of an exception. But even then, they had a lot of turnover. Like it's very hard to evaluate even to know all the pieces on every roster because of the turnover, but then to know how they're gonna fit. I mean, we saw like guys like AJ Store and his fit with Kansas, right? Like it was maybe supposed to be the pickup of the portal, and then it doesn't pan out to not that he was like horrible, but like to what it's supposed to be.
No, definitely for sure. And just bouncing off that, like you said, lots of turnaround, lots of roster turnover. Another team that has a pretty big fan base that had a lot of roster turnover this offseason, North Carolina. Um, I feel like they're an interesting team, out in the ACC. I had them on my preseason rankings. Like I had them third in the ACC. Kind of I kind of have the ACC in that top four: Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, NC State. I had them third, but I really don't know what to make of them honestly because, like I said, lots of roster turnover. Um, and even then, like you lose R.J. Davis, you lose Ian Jackson, Elliot Cadeau. Um, lots of roster turnover. You bring in obviously Caleb Wilson, the 5-star freshman, who looked really good today in the opener, but I don't really know what to make of this team honestly. And also the question mark of how good of a coach Hubert Davis is. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the big aspect. Is the last thing you touch on is how good is Hubert Davis? I don't know. I mean, you had the Final Four run in 2022, but weren't they a 8 or 9 seed? Like it wasn't. They were consistently great, right? Sometimes teams get hot at the right time, and they were talented, and that's like all of his teams have been talented, and so it's like okay, they've been talented, but like have you done your best year was in 2023 where you won 29 games, but then you're bouncing Sweet 16. Like I don't know. I don't think he's good enough for Carolina. That it's a place that demands the best, and he's not. I'm confident saying that. I don't know how good of a coach he is, but he's not. He's not a top 10 coach in the sport, and I think Carolina is a place where they demand a top 10 coach in the sport. It's a blue blood. It's Jordan. It's all a a slew of elite players and coaches. It's Dean Smith and Roy Williams. Like they Hubert Davis up against comparing him to those guys. He it's just not the level that I think Carolina needs. I don't think he'll stick a ton longer. I think this is a big year for him. I think he's benefiting. The ACC's not. It's not bad. I think it's getting a little bit closer this year to what it was. What it used to be, where it was universally regarded as the best conference in the sport. I think Duke and Louisville are both really good. Um, I can't remember my preseason rankings if I had Carolina like 3 or 4. I think right now I would peg them at 4. What did I have them at
Four,
4?
yeah. Uh-huh.
I think that's where I've come to putting them. I like NC State. I like Will Wade. I think Will Wade's a better coach than Hubert Davis. So if you're Carolina, can you let NC State have a better coach than you? Um, but they're talented. I like Caleb Wilson a lot. He'll be their first maybe top 10 pick since Kobe White in 2019, and then before that it was Harrison Barnes over a decade ago. Um, Vasar is solid. I mean, I can't say so. I have him like first team all ACC, partly because I don't think there's a ton of quality bigs in the conference. But Vasar is good, and I know you've mentioned is the Kyan Evans pickup from Colorado State. He's a solid pickup. So they have the pieces. I don't think fourth in the ACC would be bad. I think if you're Carolina, you want more. Um, but you mentioned their fan base, so it depends on how their fan. I don't think their fan base is probably happy with Hubert Davis. I don't think they're gonna get offended if I say he's not the level that North Carolina demands.
Right, definitely for sure. Like you said, getting in that top four of the ACC would be like it's a must. Because like if they're outside that top four,
Right.
I don't really know that kind of unless someone from the outside that top four really just shocks us. Like it's kind of like I feel like it's kind of like the Pac-12. Like when we were covering it, like that top four you had like UCLA, Arizona, like Oregon, USC, and then like
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of just like a whole mix
A
up.
drop off.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, but yeah, we'll see. Their fan base is definitely pretty rabid. They were giving us pretty much a hard time. I know they gave Scott a hard time, which was
They
pretty
want to be
funny.
higher.
It was pretty funny, yeah. But yeah, it was interesting for sure. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I've had so far on our agenda to talk about. But I know we didn't talk about what conference do we not? Oh, the Big East. But I don't know. It's kind of a two-team conference, right?
We can't talk about the Big East without Scott.
That's
We'll
true.
have
That's
to
true.
if we'll have to save that next time he's on.
That's true. But yeah, anything else you want to touch on, Brandon? Like Any games of the week? Anything you want to talk about?
I mean, I think my biggest thing to touch on was just the how good the freshmen already were tonight. Came in knowing it was a maybe maybe the best collectively freshman class like ever. You have of course, Boozer, Peterson, and Devansta, and I need to go check on the BYU game, but those three guys are all worthy of the hype. But even outside of that, Koa Peat did what he did tonight. We talked about that a ton. But Caleb Wilson, 22 for Carolina, on 80% shooting. Malik Thomas and Acuff both had over 20 for Arkansas. And so I think, and there's other guys spread out around too that I'm not mentioning, but like that, the freshmen are incredibly talented this year, and so I think that's kind of my biggest thing I'm watching, especially early while we get our first looks at them.
Right. No, definitely. Um, yeah, I think that's what we call it, and that's just from day one. That's how much we have to talk about. So that just shows how much this season. I don't know how much there is to talk about this season. How excited we are for this season. So yeah, appreciate everyone for tuning in. Um, look for weekly podcasts wherever you are. But yeah, this was pretty fun, and yeah, appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone who disagrees with us. But yeah, see you guys next time.